Yo, what is up everybody, it's JTheGreat and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we look at the second installment of Swagkage's Great Ninja War discussion videos. And as you can tell by the title, this is explaining Naruto's second Great Ninja War. So folks, when it comes to the second Great Ninja War, the politics that revolve around this war in particular isn't very explained nor explored, at least in the manga and anime. But what we do know is there were several famous individuals within this respective war, right? The legendary Sannin came to fame when Hanzo gave him the famous name, the legendary Sannin. It is very likely that Kakashi's dad also came to fame, becoming the White Fang of the Leaf, right? And this war in particular was just one of the more lesser explored wars compared to the third one, compared to the fourth one, of course, with the war arc. So I am very intrigued to see how Swag approaches this and what info he has on it and what his interpretations and opinions are on this particular war due to it being obscure compared to the others. But before I begin, any of us really appreciate it. Hit that like button, turn on bell notification to stay updated with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy a Mess with the Kid, man, make sure to hit that sub button because once you do, become part of the family forever. But let's not waste any more time, screen. See what Swag says today.
Hey fellas, how's it going? Swagkage here, and today I'm going to be following up on the promise I made in my last video to talk about the second Great Ninja War. Now, like with the first war, a lot about this conflict is up to interpretation, though there is a bit less room to read between the lines here since we know a lot less about the time period that this war took place in. Fortunately, we are given a pretty rough idea of when the war took place, which is about 20 years after everybody signed the peace treaty that brought the first war to an end. Now, the thing is, it's a bit difficult to pinpoint where exactly that's supposed to be in Naruto's greater timeline because we don't know how long the first war lasted. We know some things that help clear this up a little bit, but we're not given any concrete dates or anything, just major events and character deaths. The most notable thing that happened during this war was the fight between Hanzo and the Sannin, and if we assume that these three were about 20 years old when this fight took place, then that would place this war roughly 30 years before the beginning of the series. Some of the war's other major events include the death of Sasori's parents at the hands of Kakashi's father Sakumo, the death of Tsunade's spouse Dawn, and the respective deaths of all of the Rain Village orphans' parents. Now, as far as things that we know 100% happened, at least according to manga canon, this is pretty much all of the important stuff. There's some filler that goes over some stuff that may have happened in this war, and it gets brought up in one of the movies, but like with all filler, it's non-canon, so I won't pay much attention to it. Fair enough. There is quite a bit more about the second war to dig into, but like with the first, a lot of it is either inconclusive or not directly stated. For example, we're not even told which villages participated in this war. We know some, specifically the Leaf, Sand, and Rain villages, but everyone else is kind of up in the air. The Hidden Stone village was also probably involved, but I can't say for sure that they were. The closest thing we get to conclusive evidence that this was the case is a flashback where Nagato mentions being attacked by a renegade ninja who looks like he may be wearing a Hidden Stone headband, but again, he was a renegade ninja, so we don't know whether or not he was actually affiliated with the stone. Plus, this was a flashback, so Nagato may have been remembering it incorrectly. The ninja's allegiance is never actually stated, and the engraving on his headband isn't super clear. It definitely looks like the Stone Village symbol, so I think it's safe to say that they were involved, but this is the only sign we're given, at least as far as I can tell. Now, later in the same chapter, Nagato does mention a three-way conflict between the Leaf, Sand, and Stone villages, and even though he doesn't do anything to indicate that he's changed topics here, there's no way he could be talking about the second Great Ninja War, because over the course of this page and the next one, he explains that while the Akatsuki was working with Hanzo to bring this war to an end, the group was ambushed and Yahiko was killed. This could not have possibly happened during the second war because Obito met with Yahiko after being rescued by Madara when he was nearly killed during the third Great Ninja War. Great observation. So again, we don't know for sure who all participated in this war, but we can say with certainty that the Leaf, Sand, and Rain villages did, and that the Stone Village was a very likely fourth party. We also know that the Rain Village shouldn't have been the only small settlement that ended up getting involved in this war. It's said that much of the fighting took place in small villages located between the five Great Nations just in general, not specifically in the Hidden Rain village. That said, since it was literally in the middle of the only three nations that we know took part in this war, the Rain village definitely suffered the most collateral damage and was almost completely devastated. This was actually supposedly the only reason the Rain village participated at all. Now, the only person from the Rain village that we know for sure...
So basically, the Rain Village was the epicenter for the Second Great Ninja War, due to it being basically in the middle of the three great nations that were involved in this war, to our knowledge, right? So a lot of collateral damage took place in that village, and it definitely probably brewed resentment from people like, of course, Hanzo the Salamander, who was a very, very formidable shinobi at the time, enough to probably kill a Sannin if he wanted to. So the Rain Village was essential in this war, and it breeded the likes of Nagato, Yahiko, Conan, etc. So that's very important to keep in mind. Let's continue though.
Actually did anything was Hanzo, and I'm pretty sure that it's entirely because of this guy that the Rain Village wasn't completely destroyed.
Oh, I agree.
The fact that he was able to fight all three Sannin at the same time,
Correct.
and the only reason they survived was because he let them live.
Correct.
He's obviously got to be pretty strong. Now, to be fair to the Sannin, they probably weren't at their strongest when this fight happened.
Fair enough.
Jiraiya should have at least known Sage Mode, since when he met Nagato, he was under the impression that the kid was the child of prophecy that the Toad Sage from Mount Miyaboku had told him about. Even if you assume that the Sannin were all substantially weaker than they were when we were first introduced to them in part 1, it's still pretty impressive that Hanzo managed to fight all three of them at the same time.
Very
Something
impressive.
else that's fun to consider is all of the other people Hanzo may have come into contact with throughout this war. We know he and Chio fought a handful of times, and it's because of this that she was able to develop an antidote to his toxins. But we don't really know who else he fought aside from her and the three Sannin. It's totally possible that he had some run-ins with one or more of the Kage, since the villages don't really seem to have any qualms with putting their leaders on the front lines. Well, you could argue that maybe they stopped after how many Kage died during the First Great Ninja War. I don't think that's true, since we learned that during the Third Great Ninja War, the Third Raikage challenged 10,000 ninja all by himself. So in the event that the Kage did participate in this war like they did in the last one, and like they would in the next one, considering how much fighting took place in the Rain Village, I'd say it's really likely that Hanzo ran into at least one of these guys. Given what we know about the First War, at this point Hiruzen was definitely in charge of the leaf, Onoki should have been in charge of the stone, and the person leading the Sand Village, well, at this point that could have been any one of the first three Kazekage. We're not really sure. Now keep in mind, if Hanzo did fight Hiruzen or Onoki during the Second Great Ninja War, they wouldn't have been old, nowhere near as old as they were when we were introduced to them. Hanzo would have been going up against them in their prime. And while you could argue that these fights probably didn't happen because we would have heard about them if they did, it's still really fun to imagine that they may.
Most definitely.
I feel like there's a reason, after all, that Jiraiya was shocked that the leader of the Akatsuki, the guys who have Itachi on their team, was able to kill Hanzo. And while it could have totally just been a result of his personal encounter with Hanzo, I also think it would make a lot of sense if it was because this guy had survived the fight against Prime Hiruzen or something equally crazy. There's nothing in the series that confirms
that's a fair interpretation.
That something like this happening, but like I've been saying, it is fun to think about, and it's totally possible given what we know about Kage and their tendency to follow their village's troops into battle. Now, regardless of Hanzo's involvement and who he did or didn't fight, we don't really know how this war ended. Like I said multiple times, we don't even know who all participated in this war, much less how it affected those that did. But based on the way Nagato talks about it, to be more specific, when he's talking to Naruto, he refers to it as your Konoha Shinobi War. It seems like Konoha either initiated the war, won the war, or came out of the war pretty favorably compared to everybody else.
Yeah, seems that he's implying that by saying that.
Advantage is also, of course, never stated, but I think we can pretty safely assume that Tsunade and Hiruzen had something to do with it. Based on how horribly outmatched all of the other villages were by just Minato, like, by himself in the Third Great Ninja
he's a
War,
monster.
I feel like it's safe to assume that Prime Hiruzen probably would have given everybody involved in this war a pretty hard time as well. Tsunade, on the other hand, practically revolutionized team building, and this probably gave Konoha a massive advantage. After Dan was killed, she suggested that every three-man cell include a medical ninja. Not to mention her own skills as a medical ninja probably made a pretty big difference on the battlefield as well. So in conclusion, it seems like, or it's at least reasonable to assume that the Leaf Village won the war, or came as close to winning the war as anyone possibly could have, all things considered. We don't really know if or how the Cloud and Mist villages were involved, or how the Stone and Sand villages were affected by this war.
It's very vague, yeah.
Really a lot of the groundwork for the next major conflict, the Third Great Ninja War. Next time I see you guys, that's what we'll be taking a look at, and hopefully there's a bit more to it than this one, because the second war was a little bare bones compared to the first. Anyway,
Agreed.
till then, take care.
Great swag. Great video, as always. Peace out. Alright, folks, there you guys have it. That was a very good video. I actually really liked his interpretations and various takes on what could possibly have happened in the Great Second Ninja War. Now I'll say this, when it comes to Hanzo, do I think he battled a Kage? I think it's kind of unlikely, because I just think a prime Hiruzen, or a much younger Hiruzen, would be too much for Hanzo. And I don't see a reason why he would allow someone of the caliber of Hanzo to survive. So I think it's highly unlikely that he fought the third Hokage. I think the third Hokage would have taken his life, honestly. Unless, you guys think the third was weaker than Hanzo, which I don't think most of you do. That's up into interpretation, but from what we know, the third Hokage was the strongest of all the 5 Kage during his time as Hokage within Konoha. So it'd be quite a stretch to conclude that in the event Hanzo and the third were to battle, that they would be relative, or that the third would be inferior, right? And it would just be weird to assume that he let him live. Why would he let someone that important within the shinobi world, not just the Rain Village, but in the entire shinobi world, live, right? Because basically killing Hanzo would result in the imminent destruction of the Rain Village and the imminent victory of Konoha over the Rain Village and probably the whole Great Ninja War. So I think it's highly unlikely that he battled Hiruzen. Maybe he battled other Kages, right? Because they're not as strong as Hiruzen, as we know. Maybe he battled Onuki, right? Maybe he had some scuffles with some, right? Which isn't hard to fathom. This war, like Swag and I said, it wasn't very explored, right? It's an interesting war to think about, and it's also important to talk about what Swag ended this video by saying was Tsunade's impact on this war, and honestly the shinobi world at large, because in this war she became the world's greatest medical ninjutsu the world has ever seen. She was godly at medical ninjutsu, right? And because of her contributions to battle, it essentially revolutionized battle strategy for particularly the Leaf Village, right? They started to have 3-man teams with a medic always within that 3-man respective team. And honestly, I think Swag made a great point. It probably highly increased the success rates of Konoha shinobi when they were in battle. I think it highly increased it, because having a medical ninja amongst your unit greatly enhances your possibilities of success. Just think about it, right? If you get hurt, you get another chance, especially if you have one the caliber of Tsunade or anywhere close to her. You have a higher chance of success. You get injured, you can retreat, heal, come back, maybe you get the upper hand the second time. It's very, very interesting to think about. Tsunade is actually very underrated in that aspect. She is a revolutionary individual within the entire shinobi world. She revolutionized battle strategies within Konoha and probably the entire shinobi world. So that's something to think about. I think it's very, very interesting. So this war was definitely more impactful than you might think, right? Obviously it wasn't as explored, but we got some legendary individuals come out of it, some legendary tales to tell, like the third rate Kage going against 10,000 shinobi. That is legendary. The legendary Sanin coming to fame, legendary. Tsunade's impact with her medical ninjutsu and her battle strategy, brilliant, right? So I think I agree with Swag's interpretation of Konoha coming out victorious, right? Because Nagato implied it, right? Nagato said this was Konoha's shinobi war, and you guys are the reason why my people are dead, and like he's vengeful towards them in particular, implying that they were the ones that came out on top, right? Because let's say the stone one or the sand one, he wouldn't call it the Konoha shinobi war. He would have called it the sand war or the stone war, and he would have been more vengeful towards those villages respectfully, right? So it only makes sense narratively that the Konoha most likely won this war, and the achievements done by them imply that as well, right? I think it's something important to note also is that the second and probably even the first and third was really a flex for Konoha. Think about it. The second, the Sanin, right, were dominating. I mean, Hanzo let them live, but besides that, they were becoming world-class shinobi that were known amongst the world, right? The third was the strongest Kage, And then the third Great Ninja War, Minato flexed. It wasn't even Konoha. It was just him by himself, slaughtering shinobi. Like he was a god amongst boys. He was literally a god amongst boys in that war. So these Great Ninja Wars were really kind of moments for Konoha to establish their dominance and their presence within the shinobi world, right? There's obviously this common trend, this commonality of events throughout the Naruto timeline that implies that Konoha is the apex predator of great ninja of the five great ninja nations. They are the apex. They are the top of the food chain, so to speak, due to the caliber shinobi that are within that village. Minato, Itachi, Hiruzen, the legendary Sanin. Later on, Naruto, Sasuke. They are the apex predator, right? So because of that, it's highly likely that they came out on top in most, if not all, these Great Ninja Wars, right? So that's something to think about as well. But yeah, guys, this was a very interesting video. I really like exploring, what these Great Ninja Wars represented, what took place, and how it impacted the Naruto timeline and the shinobi world at large, right? I really wish the political aspects were more explored, but then again, they weren't. That's okay. I think that's always an interesting rabbit hole to go down and explore. But either way, this was very interesting. And again, it was unexplored. It wasn't really explored like Swag suggested. And he's right. That Great Ninja War wasn't really explored in the political aspect. But either way, very well done by Swag. Very interesting video. Let me know your takes on this Great Ninja War. What's some things that you thought were impactful, interesting, whatever the case may be. Let me know. I'm always interested to hear your thoughts. But that's going to wrap it up. If you guys have any recommendations, please let me know in the comments. And I'll catch you in the next video. It's Jay the Great signing out. Peace.